Welcome to Digital and Collaborative Learning in Context, Assessment 1.
We have identified that self-regulation of some of our priority learners is a barrier to their achievement. This barrier has also got implications for stakeholders in the children's learning. We have identified a target group of students we'll be working with in reading. Zubram, Tadlock and Roberts state that self-regulated learning is a process that assists students in managing their thoughts, behaviours and emotions in order to successfully navigate their learning experiences. Also, Zubram and others cited Harris and others who suggested that motivation and engagement in self-regulation are the key for learners to persist through challenging tasks to meet their learning outcomes. Despite having learning goals and success criteria, our target group of students have a fixed mindset, low self-efficacy, and are stuck in a negative behaviour and feedback cycle.
Reflecting on our current practice with this target group against the 21st century learning design rubric, we notice that students operate at a pre-structural level, level 1 of the student capability matrix as well. Students are usually working individually with little opportunity to witness modelling of effective self-regulated behaviour by others who are competent. Teachers are making decisions about what work will be done, where and when. Specific feedback is given, but on reflection we see that this is not helping to move the students' learning forward, and students are not making the connection between task goals, success criteria and what they have produced.
Our first pedagogical outcome for students is for them to set up their own goals. The New Zealand curriculum vision states that tamariki will be confident, connected, actively involved lifelong learners and have the values of excellence, innovation, inquiry and curiosity. Our first pedagogical outcome relates to our school values: honesty, respect, perseverance and creativity. We believe that part of honesty is children needing to be accountable for their learning and their actions. Therefore, having their own goals is an important part of this.
Elton Lee in 2003 also talks about students having clear information about learning outcomes and being part of the process forming these. When we think about our priority learners, we realise that groundwork needs to happen to explicitly teach what learning goals are and have these in the room in an easily accessible format and refer to them regularly during the lesson. In addition, Michael Absalom suggests that if students are truly to have responsibility for their learning, then it should go without saying that they must be clear as they can be about what they are intending to learn. That's from Clarity in the Classroom. Latham and Locke suggest that learners need to have goals that they believe they can attain, so we've chosen to use proximal goals to break negative feedback loops and enhance self-efficacy to drive a belief that success is attainable by the students. We also need to consider how we are having a future-focused, personalised approach in the classroom. This allows our konga to take control of their own learning through goal setting, and we believe that when they're setting their own goals, it supports children to learn.
Our second pedagogical outcome is for students to plan to create their own knowledge using Google Apps for Education. The 21st century design talks about students who work on their own and receive their own grades are not well prepared for the workplace, where it's likely that they'll be working in teams with others to accomplish tasks sometimes too complex to do on their own. We believe that it is of high importance that learners who have struggled in the past on their own have opportunities to succeed and see the power of working with others to talk about, solve problems, create products to show knowledge and understanding.
If we look closely at our school key competencies solo matrix, it fits our idea of a self-manager. We want these students to be organised and have the equipment they need, know what to do, act appropriately and take responsibility for what they do. This supports the main aim of the intervention, which is to develop self-regulation skills. Patrick, Ryan and Kaplan state that social support from teachers and peers can serve an important role as students are learning to be more self-regulative. Findings from their study with 5th grade students showed that task engagement and the use of self-regulated learning strategies was more prevalent in students who regularly received support from their teacher and peers.
Our third pedagogical outcome is for students to evaluate their progress against the goals and act on feedback to improve their learning. We want students to move from level 1 of the student capability matrix to at least level 3, where students can describe their next learning step in relation to their current learning and may refer to resources such as curriculum exemplars. Absalom and Clarity in the Classroom states that students need to be skilled assessors of their own learning. They need to know the purpose, the product, and describe with evidence and use success criteria. Therefore, as we stated previously, teachers need to explicitly state the purpose for learning, make clear connections, and continually refocus the learning back to the purpose and the success criteria.
Zumbrun and others talk about the performance monitoring phase, where students employ strategies to make progress on the learning task. It is not enough to simply form a goal. We need to explicitly teach students how they can use a strategy to improve their learning. It needs to be clear and visible so the students can identify the progress and state clearly what they did to make that progress. Latham and Locke suggest feedback is only information, and as such has no necessary consequences at all. And like any fact, its effect on action depends on how it is appraised and what decisions are subsequently made with respect to it. We need to consider Absalom's idea that effective feedback is dependent upon quality and clarity of the learning intentions, success criteria, and the availability of good examples. So we need to support learners to look at the feedback they receive from teachers, peers, and parents in order to make changes to their work.
Our plan is to introduce a digital multimodal platform with children presented with 2 options initially. The students will get to choose which task they want to complete to show their learning. Then this will provide a database of possible tasks for students to look at later on when they begin to design their own tasks to show understanding.
As children develop their digital learning object, teachers will work with the students on their ability to set goals, evaluate, and act on feedback. As our target students' ability to self-regulate develops, we will introduce the idea of working with others via Google Apps for Education and Hangouts. An alternative approach is reading mileage with a teacher aid. It could be argued that learners could have access to learning goals and success criteria before reading with a teacher aid. However, using a teacher aid is not a sustainable long-term solution, and students do not have the opportunity to plan their own learning.
An alternative approach is that schools may use computer programs such as Reading Eggs. While this fulfills some of the technological aspect of the programs, some programs provide opportunities for learners to choose which text they will read and which activities they will attempt. Yet it doesn't provide any real feedback on the learning goals, and the learning outcomes are not explicitly discussed. Therefore, children have no real understanding of the learning intentional purpose.
Furthermore, another approach is schools may use reciprocal reading. This could be a long-term part of the reading program, and there is potential for students to have choice over the text, but the roles within reciprocal reading fail to allow for feedback, so any feedback that is given would be by chance rather than being deliberate.
So at the start of our intervention, we will put our students first, and we will think about recording some data, such as student voice, running records, looking at observing their 21st century learning behaviours, and we'll look at their digital learning objects and their blog comments.
The first part of stage 2 of the intervention is direct teaching of skills and strategies for self-regulation. We will explicitly teach different strategies, how to use those strategies, and what skills are involved in using them. Bokitz and Corno state that the focus of this kind of instruction is modelling and demonstration, and when teachers model and explain their own thought processes, students are more apt to understand and begin to use the same processes on their own.
The second part of our stage 2 in our intervention will involve guided practice. The research from Lee and Associates states that this is when the responsibility moves from the teacher to the student. We will plan to run shorter sessions more frequently while initial challenges for new learning are overcome and successes are experienced frequently. This relates back to our area of improvement, as our students will need to deliberately and be explicitly modelled to how to be a self-manager according to our school solo matrix.
In addition, clear success criteria and proximal goals are a feature with the intervention, and it links to all of our pedagogical outcomes. Weldon proved through her research that having proximal goals increased the likelihood of effective strategy development. Another important part of the second stage links to our third pedagogical outcome. Absalom clearly states in Clarity in the Classroom that teachers must leave the ownership of the learning with the student. When we look at the self-regulation rubric, students need to plan their work using learning goals and success criteria.
Using multimodal delivery of reading content meets our self-regulation requirements. A multimodal delivery of content provides students with choice about how they'll access information and plan how they will show to meet their learning goal. In the first phase, we will have high levels of modelling and practice moving into guided work. As students become more skilled and more sophisticated, this will be something they'll be able to execute independently.
Using Google Apps for Education will support our pedagogical outcome of creating knowledge. Google Hangouts and the ability to add comments on documents will provide our learners with opportunities to gain feedback from a range of sources. This relates to all of our pedagogical outcomes that we've identified. Level 4 of the rubric means learning activities need to be long-term, and we believe multimodal is a platform that lends itself to being a long-term way of delivering content to students, as it can be varied, yet it remains a consistent portal for student choice and collaboration using Google Apps for Education.